I think I'm live, but I'm not quite sure. So I'm going to give this a moment. All right. Well, I'm still going to give this a moment. So if you're watching this on replay, just giving this a moment to allow people to come into this space and make sure that I have everything working properly. So let me know who is here, please, or that you're here, that somebody's here. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for being here. I'm still not really fully understanding this new live setup, so I never know if it's working properly. How are you? I have found myself, my goodness, probably over the last week for sure, but really most of 2020, finding myself just naturally taking in really deep breaths and sighing them out. My husband, because I'll just do it randomly sometimes and it's not intentional, I have just kind of trained my body when I need a deep breath, and my husband will ask me if there's something wrong. And there isn't. I'm not consciously upset or bothered by something. I just realize that I'm not breathing maybe as well as I should, or that I could just use a really nice, deep, calming breath. So, hello everybody. Welcome to this mindful moment. And happy Friday or happy Saturday. If you're watching this on replay, happy whatever day it happens to be for you. So I wanted to just really connect with you all and create an opportunity to do a little grounding together, to come into a space, a container, to just be, to give yourself a few moments to breathe, to be connected and hopefully feel some connection with other people. Whether you've been feeling kind of alone or you're feeling overwhelmed by all kinds of things going on, taking this moment and being in this space together hopefully can help you just recenter. Fuel your body with some much needed oxygen and hopefully a sense of belonging and love. So I will kind of walk us through a little bit of a kind of meditation, a fairly brief one though I think today, because I also wanted to create space for people to share. If there's something weighing on you, if there's something you want to share, something you want to be witnessed in, or something that you want to express, I wanted to use this as an opportunity for that, because I think no matter who we are, what color our skin is, male, female, whatever issues, whatever wounding we may have, there's no doubt that we're all feeling this energy. Some certainly more than others for different reasons. But we're all feeling it, just like with COVID. Even if we weren't directly affected, we're all feeling it. And this is, in many ways, a lot harder because, I might get emotional here. I think for many of us, not for everybody, no matter what color, but I think for all of us, this isn't an illness. This isn't a virus that, to the contrary of what some people might think, but this isn't a virus that somebody set out to create to hurt people, to kill people. It wasn't reckless in terms of life, and so it doesn't feel quite as challenging. It doesn't feel as personal. It doesn't feel in many ways as hopeless. But this, we are all, and I know it's kind of all over, it's international, it's not just here in the US, but this is personal to those that are affected and those who care about those who are affected, those who are afraid of being affected. So this is something that feels, I think, quite different for many reasons. And we all deal with it differently. We all feel it differently. We all have been personally impacted by it differently as well. So I hope whoever may be watching this, even if you're watching this on replay, know that this space is for everybody. All colors, all genders, all faiths. That this space is a space for each of you to be held, to be witnessed, to be valued. So let's just kind of take a moment to take a breath together, to feel that energy of each and every person here. Again, to know that we are not alone. Our struggles may look different. We may be dealing with something differently than the next person. But in this moment, you are not alone. So just breathing together and letting the air fill your lungs, your body, making sure that you're not holding your breath, feeling your muscles release with each exhalation. I think we're all feeling a little bit more tension these days. I know I can feel it here. This is where I tend to hold a lot of tension, like most people. I normally don't feel it quite as much as I have in the last several days, but it's there for sure. So just letting your muscles relax, feeling, noticing, are you holding tension in your jaw? We tend to do that a lot too. Just if you are, putting your tongue at the roof of your mouth can help release the clenching that may be happening. Feeling your neck and your shoulders relax down and back, because we can be down, but we can still be like this as a way to protect, and that's not healthy for us either. So it's not just down, it's down and back. Feeling your muscles melting with each exhalation, letting some of that tension go. Just taking as full a breath as you can without having to force it. Because I really do want you to feel like wherever you're at, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're needing is okay. In relaxing our muscles, in making sure that we're breathing, we prep our mind and our body to receive the connection, the energy that I send out, so that you can take that in and feel the connection to it. So just notice where the tension in your body is and send some white light, send your breath, send love to that space. And as you exhale, allow that tension to release with your breath. Just taking a few more breaths like that, continuing to release. And inhaling this peace in this moment and this connection. if you feel like there's a lot of energy swirling around inside, when we take our last exhalation together, so not in this moment, but when you complete your last exhalation, maybe letting it go with a bit of a sigh to really release some of that energy, if that feels comfortable to you. So when you're ready, take that big exhalation and just let it all go. How are you doing? So I know this was kind of short notice, and I'm sorry, I wasn't really planning on doing this today, but I've been having some conversations this week, and I just kind of felt like I wanted to do this, and I hope it's helpful for you too, but I just felt like I really wanted to connect with all of you. So so I'm going to share some of my thoughts, and I want you to feel free to share as well, whether it's just something you want to share, something you want to say, or if there are thoughts or questions or anything. So I want to preface what I'm about to share with, I am a mental health expert, I guess. I've been a therapist for 20 years. My expertise is in interpersonal violence, in particular sexual abuse and assault. But there are so many similarities and commonalities and themes that are present kind of across the board with interpersonal trauma generally, and also even kind of a bigger trauma or even wounding, even if it's not traumatic wounding. So what I'm saying is based on my mostly professional experience, somewhat personal experience as well, but it's my thoughts as somebody in the mental health field. And there are, I'm sure, probably a lot of people who may disagree with me, and that's okay. And I think that's one of the reasons why we need to have these kinds of conversations. So there's really a lot of different things that have floated through my mind in the past week and a half. Well, actually more than a week and a half, because the reality is that in a very short period of time, there has been very senseless death. And in one way or the other, I don't think that there's doubt that it was because of the color of their skin. People will say that you can't really say that for sure, but when you look at the way that racism is in this country, I can't speak to other countries, all of it is, there is no doubt that racism plays a role. And some of what has been coming up in the conversations that I've been having are, and these are actually with clients and not with clients. So people that I know in my personal life, people that I know professionally, as well as clients. Obviously, there's some differences for Black people than white people, and even other people of color. But most of the conversations I've been having have been with either white or Black people. And there are so many layers to what is happening, what's always happened, but we're all talking, most of us are talking about it now. But there are a lot of different layers to this. Individual, collective, generational, micro, macro, meso, like there's a lot of different pieces that play into this. But on an individual level, there's there's a lot of similarity in what people are struggling with, and of course there are some differences. And most of those differences are based on the color of our skin. So I think I'm just trying to think about where to focus, because there are so many pieces of this and I could go on for hours. And I want to make this somewhat brief, because I don't want it to be overwhelming for me or for anybody else. The reality is that race is a difficult issue. Oh, I want to go back to how I'm speaking about this. So my expertise is not on race or race issues or slavery or anything related to any of that. That is not my area of expertise. But my area of expertise is trauma. My education, particularly my graduate program, our purpose as a program was social justice. I just tend to focus on social justice. The social justice issue that I tend to focus on is around being a sexual assault survivor. So that's where my energy goes. That's where my expertise lies. So me talking about race is not my area of expertise. But in sharing what I'm sharing, it is partly based on my social work education. It's based on my professional experience. It's based on my personal experience as a white woman, kind of in different environments, I guess I could say. And so I'm not going to try to suggest that I am an expert on this. The conversations that I've had with white people, there's been a couple, and it's interesting. I'm just going to make a note of this as the theme. So everybody I've spoken with does want change. They're outraged and saddened, but they're also not sure what to do. They're not sure what to say. And there are different reasons for that. And I think for those of you who are white and listening to this, it can easily become a touch point for shame. Because the reality is, generationally speaking, in this country anyway, there kind of is a lot of shame with what white people have done to our fellow Black citizens. And so even though we may not have done something individually, our ancestors, maybe you go back quite a ways, but our ancestors probably have. And that shame is passed down. Not only is racism passed down, but that shame is passed down in part because we often are completely unaware that there is shame there. And the shame that I'm referring to isn't because somebody has actually done something wrong. So I'm not suggesting that each individual person here has done something wrong when it comes to race. I'm not at all suggesting that. But when we look at our ancestry and how that passes down in terms of thoughts and ideas and how we interact with people even within our own family systems, not to mention the wider community. And for those of you that have heard me talk about shame, you know that when we feel shame about something, it's often not a conscious thing, but it is easily triggered, mostly because we're unconscious of it. So it is very easily triggered. And because we are unconscious of it, what is triggered is often comes out in anger, or it's turned inward and we pull back and shut down and withdraw. So it can go either direction. People respond differently to shame. And depending on what the shame is that's triggered, it might be a little bit more one over the other. But we have to be able to recognize that our response to something is about our own beliefs, but our beliefs are ingrained in us through generations, in large part. And it's a combination of our own experiences and everything else. So some of the conversations I've had with white people are, I don't know what to say. I don't want to hurt anybody. What if I say the wrong thing? I don't know what to say. I don't really understand what to do, and I should. And so therefore they kind of stay quiet. And there's the should, right? Should is about judgment. Judgment is often tied to shame. And that's why throughout the years, when there has been something that has happened that we become outraged about, and Me Too is an example of this, there's something that happens and we become outraged, and then it dies down. And when it comes to Black men and women being killed because of the color of their skin, there is outrage by people of all races. There's outrage, but then it goes away because we don't know what to do. How can we change something that is so ingrained and been in existence for so many centuries? So we don't do anything. And it's the same thing with sexual abuse and assault. People find themselves in that position all the time. We don't know what to say to a survivor, so we don't say anything. We don't know what to say when somebody is grieving over the death of somebody, so we don't say anything. And that's why it hasn't changed. And we, as white people, have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to change it, just as men have a responsibility to change the fact that sexual assault happens every 2.5 minutes in this country. Men are the perpetrators, by and large, not solely and completely, of sexual assault and sexual abuse. There are absolutely female sexual abusers, no doubt about that. And we could get into a whole conversation about patriarchy and what that creates and all kinds of stuff. But it requires men to change the dynamic of why sexual assault occurs in the first place. This is about power. Just like in sexual assault, men in our society have power. When it comes to race issues, again in this country, white people have the power. All you have to do is look at our political system to see that very clearly. But even outside of that, we have the power. So we have a responsibility, each and every one of us. We don't all have to be out there protesting. We don't all have to be starting organizations. No, absolutely not. But because we know that we have that responsibility, we can feel overwhelmed with where to even begin. So those are some of the conversations I've been having with some of the white people that I know. The conversations that I've been having with some of the Black people that I know are different. A lot of sadness, a lot of tears, a lot of fear, and in moments, a lot of anger. You know, if you think about the Me Too thing that happened most recently, it originally started by a Black person quite a long time ago. But as women spoke up, there was a lot of anger. People were finally listening. And as people were speaking out, there was a lot of anger behind that. Rightfully so. There is a lot of anger that is going to come up in this moment for Black people. Rightfully so. The tears, rightfully so. The frustration and the hopelessness, rightfully so. And as I've talked about that with them, and just kind of trying to listen, assure them that I want to hear, because one of the things that I've heard is that they don't know that white people really want to hear it. They fear that, well, we say we do, but if they actually say how they feel, do we really want to hear that? And I do. I do. And I think that for many of us, if not most of us, as white people, I think that we do want to hear it. We just aren't sure what to do with it. And so I want to say that it is important who we choose to share with in terms of being met with openness and, well, openness, an open heart, open ears, because it can feel incredibly hurtful if you share with somebody who is not capable of hearing. And so for white people, I think, and again, this is just based on my conversations and what I know. I'm certainly not speaking for all white people. I'm not speaking for all Black people. I'm not speaking for any Black person, just based on the conversations that I've had. I think it's just about, there's more that we can do for sure, but I think the first step, so that we don't feel quite so overwhelmed, is to listen. To let our Black friends, our community members, our family members, to let them know that we care and that we're open to listening to whatever they have to say. Because I think that that's what we all, as humans, ultimately want. And I talk about this all the time as a survivor of sexual abuse or assault. We want and need to be witnessed and for our pain to be validated. And our society denies that. It blames us. The same thing happens when it comes to race and discrimination. And we all ultimately want to know that we matter in the world. That being a survivor of sexual assault doesn't diminish my value. That being Black in this world, in this country, does not, as much as it feels that way and is that way in terms of being treated, how you may be treated, it does not diminish your value. Anytime that we are feeling a lot and we're feeling alone and we don't share, it gets bottled up. And whatever it's about, but especially things that do affect your sense of how you believe that you are valued in the world. When you bottle that up, it builds energy. And if there's no valve, it's going to continue to build energy. And again, that could end up going outward, or it could be turned inward. So we need to be able to speak about this. We all do. And being able to talk with our friends and family, no matter what their color, but being able to talk openly with different kinds of people is scary, especially if you don't know for sure what their views are. And that's why we need to understand for ourselves individually, how do I feel about this conversation? Or how would I feel about this conversation if I had it? What are the things that I'm maybe feeling guilty about or shameful around? Not necessarily because you've done anything to feel guilty about, but what are you holding on to that might inhibit your ability to be in an open heart, open mind conversation? And I think that that's true for everybody. So, as vulnerable as it is to just be ourselves and not have all the answers, I think that that is, if not completely, very significantly what is needed right now for everyone. To be able to have the conversations. Because if we don't understand what our own limitations are, and this is true generally, I talk about this quite a bit, if we don't understand what our own limitations are, we can never affect positive change. Not on a big scale. And big scale changes happen because individual people make choices. We don't have to go out there and create some big thing that's going to change racism. We need to, within ourselves, feel comfortable having conversations. We need to, within ourselves, understand what might get in the way. As white people, we need to understand, what are my fears? Do I hold ideas about Black people? Do I, what institutional ideas do I support that negatively impact Black people? And I think most of us do not directly necessarily at all support those institutions, but just inherently in what is available and even our limited ability to know different pieces, we do end up supporting some of those things, and that can feel overwhelming too, to try to learn about all the different things that we need to do. So it's not about having to create, you don't have to go to school and get a degree. You don't have to immerse yourself in every book written. You don't have to even have those really challenging conversations right now with people that you know could benefit from one of those conversations. It starts in here. It starts with connecting within ourselves and asking, what am I afraid of? where do I maybe hold shame around being white, being a bystander, witnessing something, having family members. There are a lot of different pieces, and the thing about shame is that once shame is triggered, you feel the shame about everything that you felt shame around. So it becomes really, really big, because we all carry shame, whether we're aware of it or not. So ultimately what I am trying to say is that how we help as white people is my idea anyway, and how we start as white people to help is to look inward. It has to start there. And look inward with compassion. This is not about judgment. This is not about creating shame. This is about just being able to acknowledge what is there, because if we don't acknowledge it, or if we have shame around it, then we try to push it aside. We try to pretend it doesn't exist. And then we say things like, I don't see color. And that's not a judgment for anybody who does say that, but that really is a denial of the reality. It's like, I don't see gender. Well, for the most part, absolutely you see gender. You're not necessarily sitting there thinking, oh, that's a woman, and this and this and this and this, or oh, that's a man, this and this and this. No, but you notice immediately. And if you dislike women, or you have an idea about how women are, or men, all of that conditioning is right there in that moment. Whether you act on it, whether you're aware of it or not, it's all right there. And the same thing is true for race. There's no way we can't see color unless you literally can't see. So saying I don't see color is a way of kind of being in denial, and in fact even minimizing the reality. Because as a woman, if somebody says, oh, I don't care if you're a man or a woman, but you know that I'm a woman. If you see me and you start talking to me, you know you have different ideas about how I'm supposed to respond or who I am based on the fact that I'm a woman, versus if you were talking to a man, because of the conditioning that we've experienced. Maybe very conscious views about it as well, but those conscious views often come from, most significantly, from our conditioning. And not that I certainly don't need to tell Black people how to handle this or their emotions or anything. But I do want to say, and I'm saying this based on conversations that I've had, that there are a lot of white people who want to have conversations. But just like with sexual assault, where people around you that care about you don't want to bring it up because they don't want to upset you. They don't want to bring it up because they don't want to remind you of something. And so they never bring it up, and it leaves you to believe that they don't care. And the same thing can happen. We don't know what to say, or we don't want to remind them, or we don't want to upset them. So we don't acknowledge the reality of what's happening right now. We don't ask them how they're feeling, because what if it upsets them? And of course, I can't speak for every person, whether you're a sexual assault survivor or Black, but that is just one of the realities of how we as individuals respond to difficult experiences and conversations. So I think I'm going to leave it there for now. I do have a lot more, I think, to say. I think there's going to hopefully be a conversation, almost like a panel conversation too, that might be happening. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But I will, let's see, just want to check and see if there's any questions or anything. Hi, everybody. Jackie says on board. Good. I don't know. Okay, so about 14 minutes ago. I can actually see how long ago something happened on here. Yes. Good. Good. And I wanted to combine this with a mindful moment because I know that for a lot of people, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on in your mind, and there's a lot of sadness and a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. And I think it's important to make sure that in the midst of that we take time to honor wherever we're at, whatever we're feeling, and to know, and I really want people to know that I don't want people to judge themselves. That is not helpful. I will be talking about this more publicly. I don't know that I've shared a whole lot of this publicly yet. But one of the things that I have struggled with is that I grew up in a pretty racist home. And when I was in my, I think mostly, well, actually it started before my undergraduate program, but certainly when I was in my undergraduate program in social work, and started really learning more. Actually, I majored in sociology too. So as I started understanding historically and from a historical perspective and the macro aspect as well as the individual aspect and all of that, the institutional racism, I found myself at that time feeling, even though at that point I had separated quite a bit from my family in terms of upbringing, but I found myself reflecting back and feeling, I don't think I would have called it shame at the time, because at that point I hadn't really started healing or anything yet, so I wouldn't have called it shame, but I felt like, and I wanted to kind of push it away and no, not me, I'm not a racist. And so it was a learning and practicing experience to recognize what was I still holding on to, what conditioning was still present within my being. Just like when I talk about the fact that we're wounded or how abuse impacts us, that it's not just the specific experiences, it's the meaning that we attach to everything, and we're often very unaware of the thoughts that are going through our mind and the long-term impact and all of that. When the conditioning is generally inherently something that we're not conscious of. And that's what causes us to believe what we believe and to think the things that we think and to do the things that we do when we're not conscious. And so in looking at my own conditioning, that was something that I really had to kind of uncover and dive into and see, where were those ideas? What were those ideas that I was still holding on to? And there were some. I don't believe that I don't know that I ever necessarily treated people specifically different, but it was definitely, there were ideas in my mind. But I had to look at how is that showing up? And I'll talk more about some of that later, but It's not easy because when shame is triggered, our defenses go up. We, as humans, we protect ourselves like that unconsciously from feeling or experiencing shame. So if shame is triggered, the wall goes up and we are no longer able to approach something from that open space, the open heart, the open mind, the open ears, which is why I talked so much about shame a little bit ago. So again, this is not my area of expertise. So I'm speaking about this from a mental health, a general mental health aspect, and what I do know about racism as a social worker, predominantly as a social worker from social justice. And I worked at the YWCA for a while too, where their mission is to eliminate racism. But I am not the expert on that. So, does anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments? Anything that you'd like to share? I know that this can feel like a much more vulnerable conversation for many people. I know we tend to have a lot of very vulnerable conversations here, but this one can feel, especially if it's not a conversation you typically have, can feel even more vulnerable. It does feel even more vulnerable for me too, because I don't feel like because I don't have all the answers, and I feel like I've got a lot of the answers for survivors of abuse. There's not a lot I can change necessarily, but I feel like I do have a lot of answers, so I feel it's not vulnerable for me to talk about that. And I know that this wounding around race and racism and violence is so, so deep. It can feel overwhelming for everybody. So, well, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching and bearing with me as I shared my thoughts. And I am open to hearing your thoughts as well, no matter what color your skin is, whatever your perspective is. Because I think it is important that we know what people's perspectives are, because if we make assumptions, then we can't address the real issues. So I'm just recognizing that this is the social worker in me coming out. So we have to be able to talk about it. I do think it is important, though, to be mindful of how and when you're sharing with somebody, how you're having those conversations. Make sure that you are kind of setting boundaries for yourself around who is safe to talk to, who do I know that I can have a difference of opinion with and not be judged or not be yelled at or something like that. And this is true for all people. So again, boundaries plays a role in everything. So just kind of being mindful of that for yourself as you feel into everything that you're feeling and as you decide to share. So thank you for being here, and I will look forward to seeing you soon. If you're watching this on replay, either on Facebook or on YouTube, and if you've got comments or questions or anything, please feel free to let me know. If you're watching this on Facebook on replay, please make sure to tag me so that I can see it, because sometimes it's hard for me to find some of the comments during a live and also afterwards. So thank you for joining me. Wishing you all a very peaceful and connected weekend.